Christian hip-hop is a powerful space where faith and artistry collide. And today we're exploring that talent with Caleb McCoy. His latest album, Duality, dives deep into the complexities of life, faith, and perspective. Whether you're new to Christian hip-hop or a longtime fan, this conversation is one you don't want to miss. Let's jump in. Welcome to Kingdom Builder, and I'm your host, Mike Laxton, and today's interview is extra special as we dive into the world of Christian hip-hop, a genre that's growing rapidly but still has so many amazing voices flying under the radar. One of those voices is Caleb McCoy. He's here with us to talk about his brand new album, Duality, and the unique perspective he brings to the genre. Caleb, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So we're just going to dive right in. For many of our viewers, this might be their first time of hearing about you and your work. Can you share with us a little bit about your background and how you got into Christian hip hop and what your journey was like to get to where you are today?
For sure. Yeah, so my background is I'm born and raised in Boston, Mass. Proud native of Massachusetts. I was raised in a Christian home, some really dope musical parents, played drums and loved music in the church. But as many teenagers do when they come of age, kind of did my own thing. Got into a lot of the things that you might expect as an adolescent trying to find himself in the inner city. And then fell in love with hip hop because I felt like it really spoke to my context, for better or for worse. It really put a voice to some of the things I was seeing and going through. And eventually, as I realized I did not want to be part of a negative expression of hip hop, I migrated into Christian hip hop and doing it in a way that I felt like was authentic to me and what was real to me, but also something that represented the right things to glorify. And so that's where I started to do music. I started to call it the oak or the one of a kind, meaning music that's deep rooted, prolific, and unique. And so that's kind of like the mantra in which I've been doing music under.
Awesome. Well, it's good to speak with you. And for those who might not know, what other artists would you compare yourself to as far as like your sound, hip hop wise, either secular or Christian? Who would you compare yourself to?
You know, I've always been inspired by Andy Mineo. Well, actually, not always. I've been inspired by Andy Mineo. I think especially his work over the last few years has been really creative. I'm a John Bellion fan. I feel like he mixes contemporary with gospel, with R&B, with hip hop. I grew up on I guess you'd call it like street rap of the 2000s. So that's been a huge influence for me. And then I love the lyricism of folks like Eshon Burgundy, or S.O., or a lot of the OGs in the Christian hip hop space. So, you know, I feel like I'm an eclectic mix of inspiration.
No, for sure. And I think it's representative in your new album here, Duality, which it's a project that's full of contrast, and you can hear that with the different theming there is in the music. Can you kind of explain the concept behind the album and how duality became that central theme and what it means to you personal and on a creative level as far as that theme?
Yeah, appreciate you asking. So dualities, the definition is just holding two things or two truths at the same time, whether they're opposing truths or truths that might appear in contrast. And so I feel like that's an important moment right now because sometimes we reduce people and issues and faith to one-dimensional, simplistic things. And I feel like it's important to honor the complexity of our stories, the complexity of our faith and our walk with God, the complexity of our ideologies and our belief system. Even amongst Christians, it's not monolithic. And so I feel like for me, and especially in terms of my faith journey, you have to embrace your past and your future at the same time. The future that God's calling you to, but also how your past triggers, traumas, brokenness continues to show up for most people. And you've got to work through that and bring that to the Lord. You have to talk about the duality of different cultures. Most people these days aren't representative of just one culture, whether it be an immigrant American or somebody that grew up in the hood that's moved to the burbs, or just a lot of people have to hold multiple cultures at the same time. And so
Mhm.
this duality was really just a metaphoric representation of the fact that we, especially as believers that want to act with wisdom, have to hold things in contrast and complexity.
No, definitely. And you could see that throughout the different the pairs of themes with 16 tracks. It was a nice listen. You have the 8 different pairs of themes there. There are a
Yeah.
couple of pairs that I personally enjoyed the most. Joy versus Just Grieve, and then
Hmm.
Scarcity versus Abundance. And actually, I think Just Grieve is probably one of my favorite songs. Just
Wow. Okay.
I've had a lot of loss in the past year and a half between my mother, someone we both know, Chris Chicago, who's very influential in the hip hop industry, Christian hip hop industry, and then
Hmm.
even a friend from work, and then even my grandmother. So it
Wow.
really,
Sorry to hear that.
it really hit home to me. But those two themes, joy and just grieve, and then scarcity versus abundance, I think those are really kind of stand out in my perspective. How did you come about choosing the particular themes, specifically those two, and how they
Hmm.
reflect on the complex nature of human life and faith?
Great question. Um, you know, the funny thing about Joy and Just Grieve especially was that I recorded those songs before I came up with the concept of this album. Joy has always been something that has been like almost an enigma, but also something that I continue to wrestle with. When I first got saved, my concept of like enjoyment and pleasure was so distorted that it felt weird to have fun and to like experience fulfillment. It almost felt like I was supposed to be just suffering, which I get part of this part of the part of the dynamic of this faith is suffering when you're trying to do right, but trying to look within and say, okay, God, you placed a purpose in my life to be joyful in you, and also you've created pleasure, you created love, and you've created good things. It's not just about, it is about crushing yourself for the sake of sanctification, but that's not always going to be torturous, and there can be joy even in the hard times. And so that's that. Then also on the other side of the coin is there's grief. And I believe that if we're able to grieve well and process difficult emotions well, we can experience joy that much more.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so I just feel like there's an interesting intertwining for those two things. But again, the funny thing is, and I guess that's how God works, I didn't have the concept of duality when I first recorded those. I just recorded those. And then scarcity and abundance, I had those concepts in my head as I was creating duality. But those are always fascinating for me because just a lot of the brokenness and the hostility you see in this world is from a scarcity mindset, in my opinion. The idea that there's not enough, the idea
Mhm.
that I need to protect by any means necessary what's mine, the idea that I need to always be on defensive mode or paranoia. That ideology, I think, can permeate Christian culture as well. And so there's that reality. And then the flip side of that is abundance. Whereas even if you don't have enough, how do we get enough? It's the thought and the idea that God will provide. And if he's not providing, if he's not currently providing in the way that I want him to, he's called me to live in a paradigm that's about provision and generosity, even still.
Mhm.
And so those are those two themes, how they resonated with me.
Again, a lot of great tracks, and I think those are, like I said, those are two that pairs that not only myself, but I believe a lot of others will resonate well. And
Mm,
even that grieving process, you said it's a lot of people say you need to grieve that way it'll help help that process of moving on and moving on down that journey. As far as you're someone who's been active in Christian hip hop for some time, I mean at least 10 years now, because I know you've been around for
hmm
a while. How do you see the genre as a space for expressing both struggles and victories in our faith journey? And what role does Christian hip hop play in encouraging listeners who may be facing those difficult circumstances?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different layers. I mean, hip hop is probably the most popular genre in the world right now. I know it's the most popular in the US, but hip hop just for the volume of words
Mhm.
that you're able to put in a hip hop song, I feel like you're able to really speak to somebody and really get into where they are in their social location. And so I believe that's a powerful, powerful thing. You can grieve with those who grieve, as I did. You can celebrate with those who celebrate. You can try to speak and put words to emotions that some maybe worship songs may not, just on the simple volume of words. And then just especially for the urban context for Black and brown people, it's no secret that hip hop really speaks to them and meets them right where they're at. It introduces them, of course, it introduces them to the gospel. It also introduces them to themselves and helps illuminate how we view the world. And so I believe that hip hop is a powerful tool, not just as an evangelism tool, but as an identity affirming tool to because I believe before or as we share the gospel, you want to help somebody find themselves or where they're at, because you can't bring a fake self to God, right? And so I believe there's a lot of power in Christian hip hop. And in the diversity, there's many sub genres right now of Christian hip hop, and I believe that all of us have our own place as we continue to splinter, just like I know it's not always good, but just like the diversity of the church does, we continue to uh, kind of like divert and try to be where we're most effective socially.
Now, of course, as an artist, you put a lot of you know, personal transformation, personal stories into the work that for all the verses you write.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how Duality speaks on your own journey of growth and how your faith has been shaped around the music and your approach to life's dualities?
Yes. So duality has shaped me several different ways. One of the concrete ways is the fact that I would say, biracial in some ways, but also bicultural. So my father's half Black and half white, and so there's a part of my family that's Caucasian. But also, I grew up in the hood and also went to private school. And there's that duality of trying to wrestle what I see when I come home versus what I see when I go to school. There is so trying to reconcile that. There's a duality of when I went into the corporate world and I was dealing with people that they were foreign to me from growing up in the inner city. There's that duality. And then there's also the duality of my past. There's a duality of I have a past of being an apathetic, insensitive womanizer that wasn't attuned to relationships with integrity at all. Um, and whether it be relationships with women or just friendships in general, just not a very not operating with integrity and a lot of callousness, and left a lot of brokenness behind me. And now, as I move forward as a man, recently married, trying to live into the future where God calls us to have healthy relationships, but still having a like have a healthy fear of that past, like because that could show up if I'm not attuned to that and continuing to bring that to God. And so the duality of knowing my past, and it's my past, but if you don't acknowledge it, sometimes it'll show up. And so trying to manage my future with my past is another duality.
So it's like that statement that, if you don't know about your history, how are you going to learn from it and how are you going to move on? So definitely
Exactly.
it goes into that a lot. Now, for someone who might be feeling overwhelmed with the dualities of life, someone struggling with their faith or inner conflict, how would you encourage them to find peace and healing through their faith?
One of the themes of this project I want to come get across is like God can handle your whole story. And since he can, then you can. You don't have to compartmentalize or shut parts of yourself off. Let God do the sculpting and the molding and the sanctification. Bring your whole self and find a community that will accept your whole self, not accept as in affirm everything you're doing. If you're being destructive, I don't think that should be affirmed, but a community that's going to love your whole self so that you can love your whole self and bring your whole self to God. Because I think a lot of people, they experience when they have to feel like they compartmentalize themselves or they can't be their real selves, it's hard for transformation to happen. And so that's one of the things. That's why I tried to go on two different extremes or contrasts, because depending on who you are, you can lean to various extremes. And so that's one of the themes in this is like bring your whole self, be your whole self, uh, get to know your whole self, so that you can be in the reality that God's called you to be, and let him do the work.
Awesome. Well, definitely wonderful words of advice and wisdom there. Again, thank you so much for your time, Caleb. We do appreciate it. And to wrap up, I have one final question for you. For those who are excited to hear more, connect with you, and finding your new album, Duality, how can fans reach out to you and stay connected with your music and ministry, as well as find that album?
Yeah, so on social, you can just look at Oakboy McCoy. That is at OAKBOYMCCOY. And on music platforms, you'll see me as just Caleb McCoy, CALEBMCCOY, and Duality, DUALITY. You can find it on any digital platform that you can look for. And so that's the best way to connect with me. And yeah, I appreciate it. And I hope this project blesses somebody and really helps them find themselves so that God can find them.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think it's going to reach a lot of people, make them kind of think about, life and life's choices and challenges. And like you said, that it's not a bad thing to have the opposing views. I think it makes you stronger as a person. And really do thank you for sharing that with us. And again, Caleb, thank you for joining us today and sharing your incredible story and the music with the Kingdom Builder audience. It has been a pleasure diving into the heart behind Duality and just getting to know about you a little bit. And we thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the time as well.
Before you go, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Caleb's music. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss an interview like this. For more on Caleb, his music, and how you can connect with him, check out the link in the description. Plus, make sure to explore what today's Christian entertainment has to offer. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.